I gotta bake another one. Paulie Malignaggi says Wilder in the Tyson Fury trilogy is gonna get the ish kicked out of him. He's gonna get absolutely destroyed, eviscerated when it comes to Wilder Fury Part 3. He also says, dun dun dun, that Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, oh my God, cannot blame, you heard it, white privileged. He says Wilder cannot blame white privilege for the Tyson Fury loss. Amazing stuff. Stick around. Hit the subscribe button. Stay tuned.
Yourself in the best position mentally to feel like you're going to win the fight. And I said that I don't have a problem with that. And I think I started reading some comments, and I got some comments on my posts saying that, I'm trying to get back in with the Wilder culture. I'm not trying to get back in with anything. I'm just breaking down fights. So I think if you're going to be crazy enough to take this fight again, I think he has the right mental approach. He's got to approach it this way. Otherwise, if you go into a fight with any kind of doubt at all, you're going to, only be doing harm to yourself. Now, that didn't mean that I now think that Wilder's going to win the fight. Now you're going to force me to give my opinion. I think Wilder's going to get absolutely eviscerated in the fight. I think he's going to get smoked to where he's actually never going to be the same again, because he took a bad beating the first time around, the second time around. The first time, I thought Fury outpointed him. The second time around, he took a bad beating that usually guys will change a lot of guys in general. So to ask for that kind of beating again, I don't see where he's going. Here's the thing. Wilder doesn't know how to fight going backwards. You're not going to figure out a way to fight going backwards. You're not going to mentally, psychologically change yourself to that point where you're going to, and physically change yourself to that point where you're going to figure out a way to fight this guy going backwards. Fury will back you up. And when Fury's backing you up, he's going to bully you. Fury is from a culture that is just, they really support that masculine force, that they have a fighting culture. Gypsies have a bare knuckle culture within their culture. They raise these kind of men. Fighting is part of their culture. Fighting is part of who they are, part of their DNA. So none of this BS that Wilder keeps preaching about, pushing the race issue and pushing the cheating issue and pushing the Mark Vrillin was a traitor issue. None of that is gonna matter to Tyson Fury. He's going to execute a game plan against you, and I don't think Wilder can handle that kind of opponent. I don't think Wilder knows how to fight backing up. There's no shot. And if he proves me wrong, more power to him. But what is going to happen when you're starting to get backed up by Fury again, and he's putting a beating on you, and you can't blame white privilege. Fury's not bigger than you because of his white privilege. Fury's bigger than you because he's genetically a bigger guy, and he knows how to fight that way. So for me, I just want to, make sure I don't get misunderstood. I think Wilder is true to himself by having this in denial mentality. I think he is in denial. I think he's absolutely in denial because, like I said, I think he's going to get the living shit beat out of him. But for him to go into the fight, he can't go into the fight thinking what I'm saying. He can't do that. Otherwise, the fight is pointless. The fact that Wilder is going into the fight thinking this way, I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem. I have a problem with him bringing up the race issue every second. That I have a problem with. But everything else, I don't have a problem with. Plus, like I said, at the end of the day, it's on his hands. He's got to handle it or not handle it.
What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also, subscribe to my channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. If you want to become part of the gang, y'all know what to do. Please hit the subscribe button. I drop daily boxing content. That's what's in it for you. All things boxing, some UFC, non-stop. We work around the clock to deliver you guys all things in the sweet science. Now, Paulie Malignaggi, he continues to, I guess he just wants to die on that hill. Let's jump right into it. You guys heard the audio in the beginning, link in the description. Paulie Malignaggi had some racy comments and had a conversation when being interviewed about the upcoming rematch. You guys heard it. He says Wilder is going to get the ish kicked out of him. He's going to get absolutely destroyed and eviscerated because he can't fight backwards. And the funny thing is, when he's giving his take, he started explaining away his comments that he had previously made, where he says, basically, I like Wilder's attitude going into the trilogy. And the race fans and a lot of the racists probably seen Paulie Malignaggi, who previously in his commentary toward Deontay Wilder had nothing, no pleasantries, nothing good to say about Deontay Wilder. So you probably had race fans in Paulie's comment section when he said something seemingly good about Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder, and they were probably like, what are you doing, man? You're supposed to be, you're not on that side. You're supposed to be on our side, right? And Paulie, in this interview, you guys heard it, he made it his business to let it be known that that wasn't the case. Go listen to it, rewind this tape. Paulie Malignaggi said something to the effect of, people are saying you're trying to appease the, quote, Wilder culture. Those were Paulie Malignaggi's words. So basically, Wilder fans, that particular group of people or demographic, you're trying to appease the Wilder culture. That's the words he used, the Wilder culture. So we know what that means. And he says, I'm not trying to impress anybody, because now you're going to make me open my mouth and give my opinion on the fight. And then that's where he started ranting, saying Wilder's going to get punished and absolutely eviscerated and things like that. Now, the ironic thing when it comes to people like Paulie Malignaggi and this whole Wilder Fury conversation, people, they say these bold comments and predictions about Wilder is no match and Wilder can't fight off the back foot. He can't fight going backwards. Wilder got trashed. He may never be the same. You know, these are the comments that you hear from old media about how Wilder can't do this. He can't box. He can't jab. His legs are too skinny. Can't fight off the back foot. Fury's too much, too masterful. Gonna back him up. These are things that you hear from Paulie Malignaggi and other people in old media. However, it's ironic to me that even when people, in their damnedest attempt to sound confident in the Wilder Fury trilogy, they always give you a moment of uncertainty where they'll take a second to kind of pull back and hedge their bet just a little bit. And it's so ever so slight, you got to pay attention to it. So for example, in the midst, if you look around and pick around all the negative things that Paulie Malignaggi said about Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder, he made sure to say, if Wilder proves me wrong, more power to him. You know what I mean? And I've seen this from not just Paulie Malignaggi, a lot of people, they sound like, oh, Wilder has no chance, but you know, it's boxing. Wilder has a crazy right hand. Like, no, you're making it sound like Wilder don't have a chance. Like throughout the rest of your whole rant and diatribe, you're making it sound like Wilder has absolutely no shot, nothing he can do. There's no improvements he can make. But then people always find a way to kind of walk it back and give more of a realistic approach. And like I said, it sounds to me like Paulie Malignaggi is just content dying on that hill. He already lost his job with Showtime for controversial comments, we'll say, regarding race. And now he's back at it. So one would have to ask, and it kind of begs the question of, you know, at least initially people were asking, was Showtime's getting rid of or firing Paulie Malignaggi for those controversial statements? And let me, before I get too deep into this, smash the like button. Let me tell you a little bit what he says. You guys see, it says Showtime cans Paulie Malignaggi for racial comments, right? So at the time, this was last year, at the time, he had did an interview with UK media, right? An American fighter, he did it with UK media. And this was all in response to a statement made by another black fighter, Devin Haney, who was saying that I'll never let a white boy beat me, which to me was kind of like an ode to a statement that the great Bernard Hopkins had said, right? Paulie was so like rattled by this conversation. He says, Devin, he probably wasn't talking about Lomachenko. I assume he's talking about Luke Campbell, who I think he is a more viable opponent for. Said, when you're in your early 20s, you don't express yourself that very well. Ironically, he was talking about Devin for making that I'll never lose to a white boy comment. And he says, when you're in your early 20s, you don't express yourself that well. But it was him who's in his 40s who actually made statements that got him removed from his lucrative commentary job. And the sad part about it is last year was the pandemic. This year, the pandemic's still going on, but crowds are slowly but surely coming back as some people have gotten vaccinated, this, that, and the third. So Showtime's schedule is a monster, but unfortunately for Paulie, he can't be a part of that because of statements. So when you hear Paulie Malignaggi speaking to the young 21-year-old Devin at the time, saying when you're in your early 20s, you probably don't express yourself very well. But the irony in that whole statement is it was you who expressed yourself in your 40s that got you fired. Good, because you fired from Showtime. But let's keep going. He said it's not something that great to make racial statements in 2020, especially with so many racial tensions in the world. So last year we had a lot of cases like George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and so forth, right? And Paulie was attempting to rebuttal Devin Haney. He was so visibly annoyed with Devin Haney's comments, where Devin Haney said, "I will never lose to a white boy," that he said all of this. And he went on to say, in 2020, especially with so many racial tensions in the world, it's not good to make racial statements. And he followed that up by making racial statements that people felt crossed the line. Obviously, CBS and Showtime agree with that it was too far, and they tried to get Paulie Malignaggi to apologize, right? He says, boxing has had its course in history with certain demographics dominating more than others, right? Maybe like 100 years ago, Irish fighters were better, and then the Jews and the Italians. So after he just told Devin Haney it's not good in 2020 when he made this quote to make racial statements, he's making this statement, which eventually got him fired. Make sure you note that. He says, I think African Americans became most dominant in the 70s, 80s, and even 90s. Even though the 2000s had fighters like Roy Jones for the early 2000s and Floyd Mayweather, but he capped it off at the 90s for whatever reason. Paulie went on to add, it is not great to have the race discussion because it's going to coordinate division. Then it says, before he stated, it is no longer the time of the African American anymore in boxing. Wow. Paulie, last year, these are some of the comments that got him canned. It is no longer the time of the African American fighter in boxing. It is the Eastern Europeans. So he says Europeans that have become more dominant species in boxing, Malignaggi said. I think stating something like Haney's statement could be very dangerous. Turns out comments are very dangerous to Paulie's job, which is basically what I just told you guys as well. So he says, and he also said, the last time I checked, the white fighter was the dominant species. I don't know if this article encapsulated that aspect, but that's what he said. So the irony in Paulie Malignaggi's commentary suggesting that Devin Haney should watch his mouth and watch how he conducts his candor at age 21, right? For saying I'll never lose to a white boy. But Devin Haney, that kind of quickly blew over. Meanwhile, Paulie Malignaggi has lost his job over it. Now, fast forward to the future. Wilder made a statement that I definitely agree with. He said there is white privilege in boxing. Paulie Malignaggi, even though he got fired from Showtime and let go of, forced to resign or whatever, he must have been watching or it got back to him, and he felt in this interview the need to rebuttal that. And he says, oh, Wilder can't blame white privilege in boxing. Paulie sounds so misguided, so delusional, it's not even funny. Because at the end of the day, what Wilder is saying, nobody's blaming Tyson Fury's height. You know, this is the thing. When you try to have a discussion, people try to exaggerate to try to make a point. Nobody believes that Tyson Fury being nearly 7 feet tall is white privilege. You know, so that's ridiculous. But ironically enough, Paulie Malignaggi comes from an area which has been riddled with racial tension. He's from Bensonhurst. And if you guys, I'm not going to give you a whole history lesson, but look this up. The MDK of Yusuf Hawkins, right? Just look this up. Yusuf Hawkins. This is where Paulie's from. Hawkins was age 16, had gone to Bensonhurst neighborhood in Brooklyn with some friends to look at a car when he was attacked by a group of white youths, one of whom shot him. So look that up. This is also the man, Paulie Malignaggi, who in 2014 said this: why does the race card get pulled here? It's about police needing to be accountable for their actions. Race isn't an issue here. So he's made these statements, and now you see why he got fired. A fan said, Paulie Malignaggi, let me ask you this way. If Trayvon Martin were a pretty white girl, would Zimmerman be free? No. So somebody rebutted. He said, I think if Martin was a girl, Zimmerman wouldn't have felt threatened. Definitely not defending him, but he just needed to mind his business. So he's saying he's not defending him, but that's kind of a cop-out. Then the person says in 2014, Paulie Malignaggi, but he didn't because Trayvon Martin was a black male. See also Ferguson, right? To which, and I have it zoomed in for you, to which Paulie responded in 2014, right? He's saying to the fan that put that, I do believe Trayvon Martin was beating up Zimmerman, but Zimmerman should have been minding his business instead of playing officer. So you admit in the Trayvon Martin Zimmerman case that you had a person in the neighborhood who was pretending to be a cop and following the situation, and it escalated. And then you blame Trayvon Martin for beating up Zimmerman. You says, I do believe he was beating up Zimmerman. Once again, Paulie getting canned. Now you understand it. As far as his comments on Wilder, my thing is this. The fight is not that far away, 7-8 weeks away. Let's see what happens. Paulie could say whatever he wants. And at the end of the day, I want to see what Paulie Malignaggi has to say if Wilder and when Wilder knocks out Tyson Fury. I got much more to say on this topic, but I don't want it to be too long, so I have to break it up. Come back to the channel. I'll probably do a part 2 of this and give you more of my thoughts, but it's just a lot of stuff. People saying Wilder can't fight on the back foot, but he knocked out Luis Ortiz on the back foot at a standstill. He knocked out Artur Szpilka on the back foot, and Paulie's the fighter, so he should know these things. So I can't wait. I can't wait. Make sure you click the link in the description to use TUBEBUDDY. We'll continue to talk about the tough issues in boxing. That's my pack, but use TUBEBUDDY. It'll help your channel. It can help you make more money. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. We working.